This 4-year-old beggar girl is pulled by the hair outside a bakery, but a millionaire appears behind the aggressor and does this. Comment. What you think will happen. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. The scream echoed through Main Street in Willow Creek like a gunshot in the quiet Tuesday afternoon. Maria Sanchez, 34, felt her heart leap into her throat when she saw her daughter Sophia, just 6 years old, being dragged by the hair by the owner of Tony's bakery. "Let her go!" Maria cried, running desperately along the uneven sidewalk. Her bare feet slipped on the damp ground from the light drizzle that was falling over the historic upstate New York town. Mr. Tony, a stout man of 58, held firmly onto the little girl's brown hair while yelling, "This brat stole a roll from my bakery! Where are this kid's parents?" Sophia sobbed convulsively, her big brown eyes filled with tears, trying to explain with a trembling voice. "I only picked up the roll that fell on the floor, mister. I was hungry. Liar, I saw you take it from the shelf." Tony tightened his grip on the child's hair, making her scream in pain. Maria arrived breathless, her simple clothes, a faded blouse and mended skirt, highlighting the poverty that had plagued them for months. "Please, let go of my daughter. She has some issues. She doesn't always understand things right." Issues? What kind of issues? Tony looked with disdain at the thin woman in front of him. "You two are always wandering around town like bums. I'm tired of seeing you rummaging through the trash cans." The humiliation burned Maria's face like fire. It was true. Since she had been laid off from St. Jude's Hospital 4 months ago, mother and daughter had been living on the streets of Willow Creek, sleeping in parks and under awnings, surviving on scraps they found. "She really has a medical condition," Maria insisted, her voice breaking. "Sometimes she gets confused. She can't always tell things apart properly. Please, let me explain." At that moment, a deep and authoritative voice cut through the argument. "What's going on here?" Everyone turned to see a tall man with neatly groomed grey hair and impeccable business attire. Mr. Caldwell, 52, had just left the town hall where he had resolved some issues regarding his properties. His blue eyes quickly scanned the scene. The shopkeeper holding the child, the desperate woman, the onlookers who were starting to gather. "Mr. Caldwell." Tony immediately loosened his grip on Sophia's hair. "This girl stole a roll from my bakery. I'm trying to teach her a lesson." Caldwell approached slowly, observing the child's frightened face. There was something familiar in those large, expressive eyes that touched him deeply. "How much does the roll cost?" $3. "But it's not about the money, Mr. Caldwell. It's about principle." Without saying a word, Caldwell took a $50 bill from his pocket and handed it to Tony. "Here's $3 for the roll and $47 for your patience. Now let the girl go." Tony hesitated for a moment, but the authority in Caldwell's voice, one of the most respected and feared men in town due to his multiple businesses, made him obey immediately. Sophia ran into her mother's arms, who hugged her protectively, whispering words of comfort in her ear. The child was trembling, like a leaf in the wind. "Thank you, sir," Maria murmured, unable to look directly at Caldwell. Gratitude mixed with the shame of having her situation exposed publicly. Caldwell studied the pair for a few seconds. The woman had delicate features, but marked by fatigue and constant worry. The girl, despite the fright, possessed a natural beauty that reminded him of his late wife Eleanor in her childhood. The same curiosity in her eyes, the same apparent fragility masking an inner strength. "What are your names?" he asked gently. "Maria Sanchez, and this is my daughter Sophia," she replied, still not fully raising her eyes. "Do you need work?" The question caught Maria off guard. She looked up quickly, searching for signs of ill intent or condescending pity on the elegant man's face. Her distrustful nature, developed through years of disappointments and betrayals, made her question any offer that seemed too good to be true. "What kind of work?" she asked cautiously. "I own an inn here in town, the Acorn Inn. I need a responsible housekeeper. The job includes housing for you and your daughter." Maria felt her heart race. Housing meant safety for Sophia. It meant a roof over their heads. But her experience had taught her that nothing in life came without a high price to be paid. "Why are you offering this? You don't even know me," she questioned, holding Sophia tighter against her. Caldwell noticed the distrust in her voice and understood. He had spent the last 3 years watching how pain and loss could make people wary of the kindness of strangers. "Because every child deserves to eat without fearing punishment for it," he responded simply, "and because every mother deserves the opportunity to care for her daughter with dignity." The words hit Maria like a well-aimed arrow. For months, she had been failing to provide that dignity for Sophia, seeing her lose weight, seeing her daughter lose the sparkle in her eyes, seeing the episodes of mental confusion become more frequent due to stress and malnutrition. "I accept," she said quickly, before the awareness of her own fears made her refuse the only real opportunity they had had in months. Caldwell smiled for the first time in weeks. "Great. You can come with me now. The inn is just a few blocks from here." As they walked through the historic streets of Willow Creek with its colonial houses and stone sidewalks, Sophia held her mother's hand tightly, but her curious eyes observed the elegant man who had appeared like a guardian angel in her moment of greatest despair. What none of them imagined was that this afternoon would change not only their lives, but reveal secrets that had been buried for years in the town's traditional families, secrets that would put to the test the new union that had just formed between 3 completely different people, but equally wounded by life. The Acorn Inn stood majestically on Elm Street, a carefully restored colonial building that contrasted with the simple houses around it. Its whitewashed walls and blue shutters recalled the golden age of agriculture in the Hudson Valley, when Willow Creek was a haven for wealthy families. Maria held her breath as she crossed the wrought-iron gate. Manicured gardens lined the main entrance, where ancient oak trees offered generous shade. It was a completely different world from the cold streets where she had spent the last few months with Sophia. "What a pretty place," Sophia whispered, her eyes shining for the first time. "In weeks," Caldwell smiled as he observed her reaction. "The oak trees were planted by my great-grandmother in 1920. They say they bring protection to those who live here." Maria noticed the melancholy that tinged his voice as he mentioned his family. There was something about that man that went beyond his apparent prosperity, a guarded sadness that she recognized because she carried her own. "Mrs. Davis," Caldwell called to a robust woman who was approaching from the porch, "I want to introduce our new housekeeper, Maria Sanchez, and her daughter Sophia." Elizabeth Davis, 61, had been the inn's housekeeper for over a decade. Her small and perceptive eyes quickly assessed the pair, noting the worn clothes and the evident state of malnutrition of both. "Mr. Caldwell," she said softly, "wouldn't it be better if we talked first about the responsibilities of the position?" "It's already decided," he replied firmly. "Prepare the back room for them, the one next to the herb garden." Elizabeth nodded reluctantly, but Maria perceived the disapproval in her gestures. She knew that look well, the same one she received from the hospital staff when she still worked there, before everything fell apart. "Come, I'll show you where you'll be staying," Caldwell said, leading them through hallways decorated with antique furniture and black and white photographs of old Willow Creek. The room was simple but cozy. 2 twin beds, a solid wood wardrobe, and a small window that overlooked a garden where basil, rosemary, and other aromatic herbs grew. For those who had slept on park benches, this seemed like a palace. Sophia ran to the window, ecstatic. "Mommy, look at all the birdies." Indeed, several robins and blue jays were hopping among the branches of an apple tree loaded with fruit. Seeing her daughter smile made Maria feel a relief that she hadn't experienced in a long time. "Meals are served in the kitchen," Caldwell explained. "Mrs. Davis is a great cook, and Sophia can play in the garden whenever she wants." "About the work," Maria began, still processing how quickly her life had changed. "We'll talk about the details tomorrow. Today, rest. You need to recover." After Caldwell left, Maria sat on the bed and watched Sophia exploring every corner of the room. The girl seemed more alert than in recent weeks, but Maria knew that improvement was only superficial. Her daughter's episodes of mental confusion had intensified since they lost their home, and she feared that the undiagnosed neurological condition could get even worse. During dinner in the inn's spacious kitchen, Elizabeth served vegetable soup and fresh bread. Sophia ate with ravenous appetite, while Maria forced each spoonful down, her stomach constricted by anxiety. "How long have you worked here?" Maria asked, trying to break the awkward silence. 11 years, Elizabeth responded, dryly. "Since before Mr. Caldwell married Eleanor. He's a widower?" 3 years. A terrible accident." Elizabeth lowered her voice. "He hasn't been the same since then. He lives isolated, just working. That's why I was surprised when he brought you to here." Maria realized that there were layers of pain in that house that she didn't yet understand, but her priority was to ensure that Sophia had a safe place to sleep that night and in the nights to come. Later, after bathing Sophia and seeing her fall asleep peacefully for the first time in months, Maria allowed herself to relax slightly. She sat on the edge of her bed, watching her daughter sleep under the soft light of the lamp. Sophia had always been a special child. From a young age she showed sharp intelligence, but also strange episodes of disconnection from reality. At St. Jude's Hospital, where Maria had worked as a cleaner, some doctors had suggested that the girl might have some neurological condition, but the tests were too expensive for the salary she earned. The nightmare had begun when one of the head nurses accused Maria of stealing medication from the stockroom. She never managed to prove her innocence, and the dismissal came with a mark that prevented her from getting a job anywhere else in town. The savings lasted only 2 months, and then came the streets, the cold, the hunger, and the despair of seeing Sophia fade away. A soft noise at the window brought her back to the present. It was Caldwell, walking through the garden under the moonlight. Even from a distance, Maria could perceive the weight he carried on his shoulders, the loneliness that accompanied him like a shadow. Why had a rich and respected man like him been willing to help 2 strangers? Maria's natural distrust made her question that generosity. Her experience had taught her that powerful men always expected something in return for their favors, but as she watched Caldwell caress one of the cats that frequented the garden, she saw genuine kindness in his gestures. Perhaps, just perhaps, there were good people in the world, people who helped without expecting anything in return. The next morning, Maria woke up with Sophia shaking her shoulder gently. "Mommy, Mr. Caldwell is in the garden. Can I go talk to him?" "Wait a little, honey. Let's have breakfast first." But when they arrived at the kitchen, Elizabeth informed them that Caldwell had left early to resolve business at the candy factory he owned on the outskirts of town. "He left this for you," said the housekeeper, handing Maria an envelope. Inside, there was a salary advance and a handwritten note. "So that you can buy suitable clothes at Mrs. Thompson's store. Tell her it's on my account. Welcome to the Acorn." In family, Maria felt her eyes well up. It had been so long since someone had shown confidence in her that she had forgotten how good it felt to be valued. "We're going shopping, Sophia," she said, hugging her daughter. What she didn't know was that, at that very moment, just a few miles away, Dennis Caldwell, Caldwell's 28-year-old nephew, was receiving a phone call that would completely change the course of that seemingly simple story of kindness and new beginnings. Mr. Dennis, said the voice on the other end of the line. "I got some information about this Maria Sanchez. You're not going to like what I found." Dennis Caldwell hung up the phone with a satisfied smile on his lips. Sitting at his desk in the Caldwell Sweets factory, he scribbled some notes on paper while processing the information he had just received from his contact at St. Jude's Hospital. "So the little saint has a past," he murmured to himself. "Let's see what Uncle Caldwell will say when he finds out the truth about his new protégé." Dennis had always been the ambitious nephew. Since graduating in business administration, he had worked at his uncle's candy factory, patiently waiting for the day when he would inherit not only the business, but all of the Caldwell family's fortune. The sudden arrival of Maria and Sophia represented a threat that he was not willing to tolerate. Meanwhile, at Mrs. Thompson's clothing store, Maria was trying on simple but elegant dresses, while Sophia played with a small hand mirror, making faces at herself. "It's been a long time since I saw Mr. Caldwell so generous," commented Mrs. Thompson, a short woman with sharp eyes. "He must like you two very much." "He just gave us a job opportunity," replied Maria, uncomfortable with the implication. "Nothing beyond that, of course, dear. But since Eleanor left this world, Mr. Caldwell lives like a ghost. Maybe you two will bring some life back to him." Maria chose 2 simple blouses and a navy blue skirt for herself, plus 3 colorful dresses. For Sophia, seeing her daughter smiling in the mirror, wearing a yellow dress with small embroidered flowers, she felt a pang of hope. Maybe they really could start over there. The return to the inn brought an unpleasant surprise. Dennis was in the lobby, talking in a low voice with Elizabeth. Both fell silent abruptly when they saw Maria and Sophia entering. "You must be Maria," Dennis said, extending his hand with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm Dennis, Caldwell's nephew. I heard he offered you a job." "Yes, sir," she replied, instinctively distrustful of the young man's forced cordiality. "That's good. I always support my uncle's decisions, especially when they are well-founded." The tone suggested exactly the opposite. "I hope you adapt well to our quality standards." Sophia hid behind her mother, sensing the tension in the air. The girl had always been sensitive to the emotions of adults, a characteristic that had intensified during the difficult months on the street. "Elizabeth can explain your duties," Dennis continued. "My uncle had to travel to Albany, urgent business. He'll be back tomorrow." After he left, Elizabeth showed Maria her responsibilities, cleaning the guest rooms, organizing the bedding, keeping the gardens in order, and helping in the kitchen when needed. It was hard work, but honest. "One important thing, Elizabeth," said, lowering her voice. "The inn's guests are upper class, traditional families from New York City who come to spend weekends here. They expect discretion." "What kind of discretion? Your daughter can't be wandering around the inn's social areas, especially if she has issues." The word issues was pronounced with contempt, making Maria's blood boil. But she swallowed. Her anger. She needed that job more than she needed her dignity. "I understand," she murmured. During the following days, Maria went out of her way to prove her worth. She woke up before dawn, cleaned the rooms perfectly, cared for the gardens with affection, and kept Sophia away from the guests' gaze. The girl spent most of her time in the room or in the small back garden, playing alone. When Caldwell returned from Albany, he brought a gift for Sophia, a book of fairy tales with colorful illustrations. The girl's joy at receiving the gift was so genuine that he felt his heart ache. "Thank you, Uncle Caldwell," she said, hugging his legs. "You're very nice to me." The word uncle sounded natural on the child's lips, and Caldwell felt an emotion that he hadn't experienced in years. It was as if a part of him, dead since the accident with Eleanor, was slowly beginning to awaken. "You're welcome, little one. Can you read?" "A little bit. My mum taught me some letters. How about I teach you to read better?" We can do it in the garden after your mother finishes her work. Maria, who was listening to the conversation from the kitchen, felt a mixture of gratitude and concern. Caldwell's kindness towards Sophia was evident, but her experience had taught her to distrust when things seemed too good to be true. In the days that followed, a sweet routine was established. Caldwell spent the afternoons teaching Sophia to read, sitting under the oak trees in the main garden. The girl absorbed the knowledge like a sponge, her natural intelligence shining when she found adequate stimulus. "She's very intelligent," he commented to Maria one afternoon. "She should be in school." "I know," Maria sighed, "but with the issues she has, the other children don't understand, neither do the teachers." "What kind of issues exactly?" Maria hesitated. Revealing Sophia's condition could cost her the job, but lying to someone who was being so kind to them seemed wrong. "She has episodes of mental confusion," she said finally. "Sometimes she gets disconnected from reality, like she's in another world. The doctors said it could be something neurological, but I never managed to pay for the tests." Caldwell nodded, understandingly. "Have you looked for specialists?" "With what money?" The question came out more bitter than she intended. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." "You don't need to apologize. I understand perfectly." That night, Caldwell stayed awake late, thinking about the conversation. There was something in Maria and Sophia that awakened in him a protective instinct that he thought was lost forever. Maybe it was the way Sophia looked at him with pure admiration, or maybe it was Maria's silent strength, struggling alone to protect her daughter. Eleanor always said that the best families were the ones we choose to have, not just the ones we are born into. For the first time since her departure, Caldwell began to understand what she meant. But in the factory office, Dennis meticulously planned how to use the information he had collected about Maria. His contact at the hospital had revealed not only the accusation of theft, but also other sordid details that could completely destroy Caldwell's trust in the new employee. "Uncle," he said on the phone that night, "I need to talk to you about a delicate matter. It's about your new housekeeper." "What about her?" "I think it's better if we talk in person. It's something you need to know before it's too late." Caldwell felt a knot in his stomach. "What are you talking about, Dennis?" "Tomorrow, Uncle. Come to the factory tomorrow morning. And maybe it's better not to get too involved with those people until we talk." After hanging up, Caldwell was restless. There was something in Dennis's tone that bothered him deeply. He looked out the window towards the room where Maria and Sophia slept, and a bad feeling began to form in his chest. He didn't imagine that, at that moment, Maria was also awake, watching her daughter sleep, and fearing that the fragile happiness they had found was about to be shattered once again. The Caldwell Sweets factory office smelled of sugar and cinnamon when Caldwell arrived the next morning. Dennis was waiting for him with an open folder on the table, documents scattered like evidence of a crime about to be revealed. "Sit down, Uncle," Dennis said, assuming a grave tone that didn't match his 28 years. "What I'm about to tell you will shock you." Caldwell settled into the leather chair, feeling a growing tension in the air. "Just talk, Dennis. I don't like these roundabout ways." "It's about Maria Sanchez." Dennis pushed some papers across the table. "I got information about her past. It's not pretty." The documents contained copies of records from St. Jude's Hospital, Maria's termination form, marked with the accusation of embezzlement of controlled medications, and a series of reports from supervisors about the employee's suspicious behavior. "She was fired for stealing drugs," Dennis continued, carefully observing his uncle's reaction. "Expensive drugs, the kind that are sold on the black market. And it wasn't the first suspicion about her." Caldwell read the documents in silence, feeling a mixture of disappointment and confusion growing in his chest. The accusation seemed too detailed to be made up, but something about it all didn't match the woman he had met. "There's more," Dennis said, pulling another paper from the folder. "She was admitted to a psychiatric clinic in Poughkeepsie 5 years ago. Severe depression and self-destructive tendencies. She stayed there for 3 months. How did you get this information?" "I have contacts, Uncle. People who care about you." Dennis leaned forward. "Think about it. A desperate woman with a sick daughter, no money. It's not hard to imagine why she accepted your job so quickly. She's probably already planning how to rob the inn." Caldwell closed his eyes, remembering the distrust in Maria's gaze when he offered help, the way she hesitated before accepting. Maybe that wasn't natural caution, but the guilt of someone who had something to hide. "What about the girl?" he asked, his voice coming out weaker than he intended. "Sophia. Well, with an unstable mother like that, who knows what kind of real problems she has? It may not even be a medical condition. It could be trauma, neglect, anything." Dennis's words echoed in Caldwell's mind like poison. All his insecurities about trusting someone again came to the surface. After the tragedy with Eleanor, he had promised himself never again to be carried away only by feelings. "What do you think I should do?" he asked, hating himself for needing his nephew's opinion. "Fire her today, before she causes bigger problems. Give her a generous severance if you want, but get them out of the inn." Caldwell nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the decision. "You're right. It was reckless of me." Meanwhile, at the inn, Maria finished organizing the room of a couple from New York City who had left early. Sophia helped her, folding the smaller towels with the meticulous care that she always demonstrated in tasks. "Mommy," said the girl suddenly, "is Uncle Caldwell leaving too?" "Why do you ask that, honey?" "I don't know. I had a bad dream yesterday. He was sad and didn't want to play with me anymore." Maria felt a pang in her heart. Sophia had always had strange dreams, some that seemed like premonitions. During the worst days on the street, the girl had dreamed of a place with yellow flowers 3 days before they met Caldwell. "It's just dreams, Sophia. Uncle Caldwell likes you very much." But when Caldwell returned from the factory at noon, Maria immediately realized that something had changed. He avoided her gaze, greeted Sophia with a coldness that left her confused, and locked himself in the office. "Maria," Elizabeth called an hour later, "Mr. Caldwell wants to talk to you, in the office." Maria's heart raced. The way Elizabeth avoided her eyes, the formal tone of her voice, everything indicated that something terrible was about to happen. She knocked on the office door with trembling hands. "Come in," said Caldwell's voice, colder than she had ever heard. He was sitting behind the mahogany desk with an expression that mixed disappointment and contained anger. On the table, Maria immediately recognized her hospital documents, papers that she thought would never haunt her again. "Sit down," he said, without looking up. Maria sat on the edge of the chair, already knowing that her brief season of happiness had come to an end. "You lied to me," Caldwell said finally, "about everything." "I didn't. You were fired from the hospital for theft. You were admitted to a psychiatric clinic. You have a history of suspicious behavior and mental instability." Each word was pronounced like a sentence, and I, like an idiot, believed your story of a desperate mother. Maria felt tears burning her eyes, but forced her voice to remain firm. "I never stole anything. The accusation was false." Of course it was. The sarcasm in his voice hurt more than any shout. "And the psychiatric admission was also a misunderstanding, I imagine. I was going through a difficult time. Sophia was a baby. Her father abandoned us. I had nowhere to go." Maria's voice broke. "Yes, I admitted myself for a few months, but I healed, I recovered, I got the job at the hospital. Until you stole from there too." "I didn't steal." The explosion came before she could control herself. "I never stole anything in my life." The supervisor had problems with me because I questioned the treatment they gave to the poorest patients. She made up this story to harm me." Caldwell watched her for a moment, seeing the genuine pain in her eyes. For an instant he almost believed her, but Dennis's words echoed in his mind. "A desperate woman will do anything." "It doesn't matter," he said coldly. "I want you and Sophia to leave the inn today." "Please," Maria stood up, extending her hands. "Give me a chance to prove that I'm honest. Sophia is so happy here. She's improving. The child is also your problem to solve, not mine." The cruelty of the phrase hit Maria like a slap. The gentle man who had saved her daughter at the bakery had disappeared, replaced by someone cold and ruthless. "I'll leave $500 at the front desk," Caldwell continued, "so you can settle down somewhere else, but I want you out of here in 2 hours." Maria nodded, the tears finally flowing freely. Can I say goodbye to Sophia? She'll want to say bye to you." "It won't be necessary. Elizabeth can explain that I had to travel." The cowardice of the lie was the last straw. Maria stood up with dignity, wiped her tears, and looked Caldwell in the eyes. "You're just like everyone else," she said calmly. "You judge by appearances, you believe gossip, you hurt innocent people to protect your perfect little world. I may have made mistakes in my life, but I've never been dishonest, and I've never used a child to gain an advantage." She walked to the door, but turned before leaving. "Sophia likes you a lot. She'll suffer when she finds out that you simply disappeared from her life. But maybe it's better for her to learn early that she can't trust people." After she left, Caldwell was alone in the office, feeling a strange emptiness in his chest. Through the window, he could see Sophia in the garden, playing with the cats and talking to herself, probably telling them stories as she used to do. In an hour, she would discover that she had lost another important person in her life. And time, the blame would be entirely his. Sophia's scream echoed through the inn, like the lament of an injured animal. Elizabeth had just explained that they would have to leave, inventing a story about urgent family problems. But the girl wasn't. "Fooled? I want Uncle Caldwell," she cried, writhing in her mother's arms. "He promised to teach me to read the whole book." Maria held her daughter tightly, trying to calm her while quickly packing her few clothes into the worn backpack. Each sob from Sophia was like a stab in her already shattered heart. "Honey, sometimes people need to leave," she said, struggling to keep her voice stable. "We'll find another pretty place to live." "I don't want another place. I want to stay here with Uncle Caldwell." From the office, Caldwell heard everything. Each scream of the girl reverberated in his chest like an accusation. He closed his eyes, trying to convince himself that he was doing the right thing, protecting his assets and his reputation. But the image of Sophia in the garden, smiling while feeding the birds, wouldn't leave his mind. Elizabeth appeared at the door of the room where Maria was finishing packing. "The money is at the front desk," she said, unable to hide her discomfort. "And I'm very sorry. The girl is very sweet." "Thank you," Maria murmured, picking up Sophia. The child had stopped screaming but was sobbing convulsively against her mother's shoulder. As they crossed the lobby, Sophia raised her head and saw the envelope with money on the counter. Even at 6 years old, she understood the meaning of those papers. "Is Uncle Caldwell sending us away?" she asked, her voice hoarse from crying. Maria couldn't answer. She just hugged her daughter tighter and went out the front door without looking back. The streets of Willow Creek seemed even more hostile than months ago. Maria walked aimlessly, carrying Sophia, who was now strangely silent, just watching everything with big, lost eyes. "Where are we going to sleep tonight, Mommy?" the girl asked when they stopped in a park near downtown. The simple question shattered the rest of Maria's resistance. She sat on a bench and cried openly, while Sophia stroked her hair with her little "Anza, don't cry, Mommy, I'm here with you." The maturity in the child's voice was painful to hear. Sophia had learned too early that the world was a cruel and unstable place. That's how Patty Miller found them an hour later. The 45-year-old seamstress was returning from the farmer's market when she saw the two on the bench, clearly in distress. Maria? What happened? Patty knew the pair from when they were wandering the streets. She was a simple woman who worked repairing clothes in a small space at the market, but she had a generous heart that could never ignore the suffering of others. "We lost the job," Maria managed to say between sobs. "We have nowhere to go." Patty looked at Sophia, who was sitting next to her mother with a blank expression that shouldn't exist on a child's face. "Come with me," she said without hesitation. "I have a little room in the back of my house. It's not much, but you can stay there while you get organized." Patty's house was on a humble street in the South End. It was small and simple, but clean and welcoming. The little room in the back barely fit a twin bed and a small closet, but for those who had spent months on the street, it was a palace. "Why are you helping us?" Maria asked, suspicious even of kindness. "Because I've been through hard." "Times two," Patty replied, "and because this girl doesn't deserve to suffer for the mistakes of adults." Sophia sat on the edge of the bed, hugging the book of fairy tales that Caldwell had given her. It was the only thing left of her brief happiness at the inn. "Want me to read you a story?" Patty offered. "I can't read well yet," Sophia murmured. "Uncle Caldwell was going to teach me, but he doesn't like me anymore." "I'm sure he does, honey. Sometimes adults get confused and do things they don't mean to do." That night, Maria lay next to her daughter on the narrow bed, listening to her irregular breathing. Sophia hadn't had an episode of confusion since. They arrived at the inn, but now Maria feared that the trauma of rejection would bring everything back. Meanwhile, at the Acorn Inn, Caldwell walked through the empty hallways like a ghost. The absence of Maria and Sophia was palpable. No sound of laughter from the garden, no little voice asking about the birds, no warm presence that had, without him realizing it, filled a void in his life. "You did the right thing," said Dennis, who had shown up for dinner. "Women like that are dangerous. They pretend to be victims to get what they want." Caldwell nodded mechanically, but inside a corrosive doubt grew. He remembered the way Maria took care of Sophia, the infinite patience with which she treated her daughter in difficult moments, the genuine love that shone through in every gesture. Was it possible to fake a love like that? "Tomorrow you won't even remember them," Dennis continued. "Life goes back to normal." But the next morning, when Caldwell went down for coffee and didn't see Sophia running through the garden, didn't hear her voice humming, didn't feel her little arms hugging him, he realized that life would never be normal again. Elizabeth served the coffee in silence, but he noticed that her eyes were red. "Did you sleep badly?" he asked. "The girl forgot her teddy bear in the room," she said softly. "The one you bought her last week." Caldwell had forgotten about that gift, a small brown bear that Sophia took everywhere, sleeping, hugging it. "Every night, where is it? In my room. I thought about taking it to her, but I forbade any contact," Caldwell finished, feeling a weight on his conscience. He went up to the room that Maria and Sophia had occupied. It was clean and tidy, but there were still signs of their presence. A drawing of a bird forgotten in the drawer. Some cookie crumbs under the bed that Sophia used to hide to eat in the early morning. On the bedside table was the brown teddy bear, with one of the ears already worn from so much affection. Caldwell picked it up and, for the first time since he made the decision to send them away, seriously questioned whether he had done the right thing. At that moment, on the other side of town, Sophia woke up from a nightmare screaming for her teddy bear. Maria calmed her as best she could, but she knew that the child was regressing rapidly. Without the stability they had found at the inn, without the father figure that Caldwell had represented, Sophia was back to being the scared and confused girl of months ago. "Where's my teddy bear?" she asked between tears. "I need my teddy bear." It must have stayed at the inn, honey. Tomorrow, I'll try to get it for you. But both knew that this was a lie. There was no going back to the Acorn Inn. There was no going back to the brief happiness they had experienced. And while Caldwell held the forgotten teddy bear, on the other side of town, a 6-year-old girl cried for a toy that represented much more than plush and cotton. It represented security, love, and the promise that there would always be someone to protect her in the darkness. A week after the expulsion from the inn, Sophia had her first severe episode of mental confusion in months. Maria woke up in the middle of the night with her daughter sitting on the floor of the little room, talking animatedly to invisible people. "Hi, Uncle Caldwell," Sophia was saying to the empty corner of the room. "Did you bring peppermint candies? Today, can I tell you about the birds I saw?" Maria's heart broke. The girl was living in a reality where Caldwell was still part of her life, where he hadn't abandoned her without explanation. "Sophia, honey, come back to bed," Maria said gently, approaching slowly. But Sophia didn't recognize her. She looked at her mother with empty eyes and asked, "Who are you, lady? Uncle Caldwell said he was going to teach me to read today." It took 2 hours for Sophia to return to reality, and when she did, she cried inconsolably for not being able to remember exactly what had happened. "My head is hurting again, Mommy," she sobbed. "Why does my head get confused?" Maria no longer knew what to answer. Without money for doctors, without stability, without the prospect of improvement, she felt completely lost. The next morning, Patty suggested something that Maria had been avoiding. "You need to go to the clinic. This girl needs medical help." "They'll want to admit her," Maria replied, the fear showing in her voice. "They'll say I don't know how to take care of her properly." "And you prefer her to continue suffering?" The question hurt, but Patty was right. Maria had spent so long running away from problems that she had forgotten to face them for real. Meanwhile, at the Acorn Inn, Caldwell lived his own torments. Sophia's teddy bear was on his bedside table, and every night he found himself looking at the toy, remembering the girl's smile. "Still thinking about them?" Dennis asked during dinner. "It's been a week, Uncle. You need to move on." "Where are they living now?" Caldwell asked suddenly. "How would I know? And why does it matter?" The girl forgot her teddy bear. "She's probably suffering without it." Dennis sighed dramatically. "Uncle, you're martyring yourself for nothing. They're their own problem now." But Caldwell couldn't get Sophia out of his head, especially after Mrs. Thompson from the clothing store commented that she had seen that little girl you helped crying in the Central Park. "She seemed sick," she said, "very pale, talking to herself. The mother was desperate, poor thing." Mrs. Thompson's words haunted Caldwell for days, talking to herself. The episodes of confusion that Maria had mentioned. What if it really was a serious medical condition? What if Sophia was getting worse for lack of treatment? On Thursday, Caldwell made a decision that Dennis would completely disapprove of. He left home and began searching for Maria and Sophia through the streets of Willow Creek. He found them at the farmer's market. Maria was in a line at the makeshift health clinic that operated there once a week, holding Sophia in her arms. The girl looked smaller than he remembered, more fragile, with deep, dark circles under her eyes. Caldwell stood watching from afar, hidden behind a fruit stand. Maria was talking softly to Sophia, who was clearly agitated. "I don't want a doctor, Mummy," he heard her say. "Doctors are bad. They're going to separate me from you." "They won't, honey. They just want to help. You get better." It was then that Sophia saw him. Her eyes widened and she pointed in his direction. "Uncle Caldwell! Uncle Caldwell is here." Everyone in the line turned to look. Maria followed her daughter's gaze, and her eyes met Caldwell's. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Sophia began to squirm in her mother's arms, trying to run towards him. "Uncle Caldwell, Why did you leave? I looked for you every day." The pain in the child's voice was like a punch in Caldwell's stomach. He took a step towards them, but Maria got up quickly from the line. "No," she said firmly, holding Sophia. "Don't come near us." "Maria, You've done enough." Her voice trembled with contained anger. "You can't play with a child's feelings like that." "I want to talk to Uncle Caldwell," Sophia cried, struggling. "Why won't you let me?" "Because he's not our real friend, Sophia. People like him only help when it's convenient." The words cut Caldwell like blades. Maria grabbed her things and left the market quickly, carrying Sophia, who was crying, and reaching out to him. "Uncle Caldwell, don't go away again!" The girl's scream echoed through the market, making everyone look at Caldwell with curiosity and judgment. He stood there, feeling like the worst kind of coward. That night, he sought out Elizabeth in the inn's kitchen. "I need to ask you something," he said. "Do you really believe that Maria was dishonest?" Elizabeth stopped washing the dishes and turned to him. "Can I be honest, Mr. Caldwell? Please." In that woman, I only saw a desperate mother trying to protect her daughter. She worked twice as hard to prove she deserved to be here. I never saw her take even an extra cookie from the kitchen. Then why didn't you say anything when I fired her? Because it's not my place to question your decisions, but... She hesitated. "The girl hasn't stopped asking about you. Every night before going to sleep, she asked when you were coming back to finish teaching her to read." Caldwell felt the weight of guilt crush his chest. "And I didn't even say goodbye to her. She believed that you were a hero, like in the history books she liked to hear. She didn't understand how a hero could simply disappear." The next morning, Caldwell woke up with a decision made. He took Sophia's teddy bear and drove to the South End, where Mrs. Thompson had said they were probably living. It wasn't difficult to find Patty's house. It was the only one on the street where you could hear a child crying. He knocked on the door with his heart racing. Patty answered, and her face closed immediately upon recognizing him. "What do you want here?" "Sophia forgot this at the inn," he said, showing the teddy bear. "I'd like to return it. Leave it with me and I'll give it to her." "I'd like to talk to her, to explain myself." Patty laughed bitterly. "Explain what? How to break the heart of a 6-year-old? From inside the house came Sophia's weak voice. "Who's there, Aunt Patty?" "No one important, honey." But Sophia had recognized the voice. She appeared at the door in pajamas, pale and thin, but her eyes lit up when she saw Caldwell. "Uncle Caldwell, you brought my teddy bear." She ran to him, hugging his legs with surprising strength. "I knew you were coming back. I knew it." Caldwell knelt down and hugged the girl, feeling her tremble against his chest. She was visibly weaker, more confused, clearly suffering. "I missed you," he whispered, surprised at the emotion in his own voice. "Why did you leave without saying goodbye? I waited for you every day in the garden." Before he could answer, Maria appeared at the door. Her face was thinner, marked by sleepless nights, but her determination remained unwavering. "Sophia, come inside. Now." "But, Mommy, Uncle Caldwell brought my teddy bear." I said, "Come inside." Sophia obeyed reluctantly, but before entering she whispered to Caldwell, "Are you going to stay? Promise you won't leave again." The question hung in the air like an accusation, while Maria stared at him with eyes that mixed pain, anger, and a hope that she struggled to hide. Maria closed the door in Caldwell's face, but he didn't move away. He stood on the sidewalk, listening to Sophia cry on the other side of the wall. "Why did you send Uncle Caldwell away again?" The girl sobbed. "He brought my teddy bear. He remembered me." "Because people like him only show up when they feel guilty," Maria replied, her voice filled with bitterness. "Tomorrow he'll leave again, and you'll suffer even more." Caldwell knocked on the door again. "Maria, please, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," she shouted through the wood. "You judged me. You condemned me without giving me a chance to defend myself. Now live with your conscience and leave us in peace." Patty, who was watching everything from the window, came out of the house and approached Caldwell. "Mister, it's best to go. You people from high society play with the lives of the poor like they were toys." "I made a mistake," Caldwell said, his voice choked. "A terrible mistake, but I want to fix it." "Some mistakes can't be fixed," Patty replied, "especially when they hurt children." Caldwell returned home defeated, but he couldn't stop thinking about Sophia's condition. The girl was visibly worse than when she had left the inn, more confused, more fragile. What if she really needed urgent medical treatment? That night, he contacted a doctor friend in New York City and described the symptoms he had observed in Sophia. The answers made him even more worried. Episodes of mental confusion in children can indicate several neurological conditions, Dr. Ramirez explained over the phone. Some treatable, others not so much, but without proper exams, it's impossible to know. And if it's not treated, it can worsen progressively. In some cases, the child may develop permanent cognitive problems. Caldwell hung up the phone. With a knot in his stomach, Sophia could be facing something serious, and he had contributed to her not receiving the necessary treatment. Meanwhile, at Patty's house, Maria faced her own battle. Sophia had spent the night in vigil, talking to imaginary people and refusing to recognize where she was. "Mommy, where's my room at the inn?" she asked, confused. "Where are the oak trees? I need to feed the birds." "We're at Aunt Patty's house. Remember?" Maria said patiently. "The oak trees are behind us." "But Uncle Caldwell said I could take care of the birds always," Sophia insisted, her eyes lost. "He promised to teach me all their names." Each word was a stab in Maria's heart. She saw her daughter deteriorating before her eyes, and there was nothing she could do. The next morning, Patty made a suggestion that Maria didn't want to hear. "You need to swallow your pride and accept his help." "Never." "Sophia is getting worse. Last night she didn't recognize me for a whole hour. She thought I was a stranger trying to hurt you." Maria knew that Patty was right, but the fear of being humiliated again was greater than her logic. He may have money to pay for doctors, but he doesn't have the character to be trusted. "And you prefer your daughter to suffer to preserve your pride?" The cruel question hit Maria squarely. That's exactly what she was doing, choosing her own wounded pride over Sophia's well-being. On that same day, Caldwell took an action that Dennis would never imagine. He went personally to St. Jude's Hospital to investigate the accusations against Maria. He spoke with the nursing supervisor, a stern woman named Sharon, who immediately began to speak ill of her former employee. "Maria was always problematic," she said. "She questioned our procedures, asked too many questions, created unnecessary conflicts." "But about the theft of medications," Caldwell insisted. "Oh, that was just the last straw. She had been exhibiting suspicious behavior for months." "What kind of behavior?" Sharon hesitated, realizing that she was being pressed for details. "Well, she spent a lot of time in the pharmacy, always with excuses to be there." "And did you find medications with her?" "Not exactly, but..." "Then how did you know she had stolen?" "The stock was always short when she worked. It was obvious that..." Caldwell began to realize that the accusations were based more on assumptions and personal antipathy than on concrete evidence. He pressed a little more and discovered that other employees had also been accused of thefts in the same period, but only Maria had been fired. "Why was only she fired if others were also suspected?" he asked. "Because she was the most difficult," Sharon admitted, involuntarily revealing her true motives. Caldwell left the hospital with a growing certainty that he had committed a terrible injustice. Maria was probably innocent, fired by an authoritarian supervisor who didn't like being questioned. He decided to make one last attempt to repair his mistakes. He returned to Patty's house the next afternoon, this time with a concrete proposal. Maria answered the door with Sophia in her arms. The girl was having another episode, looking at him without recognizing him. "Who's that man, Mommy?" Sophia asked, hiding in Maria's shoulder. Caldwell's heart broke to see that the child who called him uncle with so much affection now didn't know who he was. "Maria," he said urgently, "I need to tell you what I found out at the hospital. You were wronged. The accusations were false." "It hardly matters now," she replied coldly. "The damage is done, but it can be repaired. I can pay for Sophia to be examined by the best doctors in New York City. Can you buy our dignity back? Can you erase the humiliation that my daughter went through when you sent her away without explanation?" Sophia began to cry, frightened by the tension in her mother's voice. "My head hurts," she murmured. "Everything is confused." "See what you did?" Maria accused. She was getting better at the inn, feeling safe for the first time in her life. "Then you destroyed everything based on gossip." "I know I made a terrible mistake," Caldwell said, his voice breaking. "But Sophia needs medical help. Don't let her pay for my mistake." "And how do I know you won't abandon us again at the first?" "Difficulty?" The question echoed in the air like a challenge. Caldwell looked at Sophia, who now watched him with curiosity, as if trying to remember where she had seen him before. "Because this time I'm going to do it differently," he said finally. "This time I'm going to fight for you, even if it's against my own family." Maria studied him for a long moment, seeing something different in his eyes. A determination. That wasn't there before. A firmness that suggested he had really changed. But before she could answer, Dennis appeared on the street, clearly having followed his uncle. "Caldwell, what are you doing here?" he shouted, approaching quickly. "I thought we had resolved this issue." The final confrontation was about to begin, and this time Caldwell would have to choose definitively between loyalty to his family and doing what was right. Dennis stopped in front of Patty's house with a furious expression that Caldwell had never seen before. His hands were shaking, not from nervousness, but from pure anger. "Uncle, you've completely lost your mind," he exploded. "Are you here begging this woman after everything we found out about her?" "What we found out was wrong," Caldwell replied firmly. "I went to the hospital. The accusations were unfounded. Of course she convinced you of that. That's exactly what con artists do, manipulate people's emotions." Maria stepped forward, still carrying Sophia in her arms. "Mr. Dennis, I don't know what interest you have in our lives, but my interest is protecting my family from people like you." Dennis cut her off. "You think I don't know what you're trying to do? Seduce a rich, widowed man to secure your future?" The accusation was like a slap in Maria's face. "How dare you speak like that in front of my daughter?" Sophia, frightened by the shouting, began to cry and squirm in her mother's arms. Her mental confusion, already aggravated by stress, worsened instantly. "Stop that screaming," she said in the voice of a much younger child. "I want my mommy. Where's my mommy?" "I'm your mommy, honey," Maria said, trying to calm her. "You're not my mommy. My mommy has long hair and wears a blue dress," Sophia cried, struggling harder. Caldwell watched the episode with growing horror. The child was clearly in distress, confusing reality with memories, and there were 3 adults, arguing instead of helping her. "That's enough," he said, approaching Maria. "Sophia, look at me. Remember the storybook. Remember the birds in the garden." Caldwell's gentle voice seemed to cut through the girl's confusion. She stopped struggling and looked at him intently. "Uncle Caldwell," she asked hesitantly. "Yes, it's me. Everything is okay. Your mommy is here. You're safe." Dennis watched the scene with a mixture of anger and something that looked like fear. "See what this troubled child is doing to you? She's manipulating you emotionally." "The only troubled person here is you," Caldwell said, turning to face his nephew. "Since the beginning, you've tried to keep me away from them. Why? What do you have to gain from this?" Dennis hesitated for a fraction of a second, enough for Caldwell to realize that there was something more behind all that hostility. "I have," To gain the preservation of our family's good name, Dennis said finally. But if you want to lower yourself to that level— Lower myself? Caldwell's voice became dangerously low. Is taking care of a sick child lowering myself? That child is not your responsibility. Yes, she is. The moment I decided to help them, they became my responsibility. Patty, who had watched everything from the window, finally came out of the house. Gentlemen, please, stop this argument. The girl is suffering. Indeed, Sophia had started crying again, but now they were silent tears from someone who was too scared to make noise. Maria rocked her, whispering words of comfort. Sophia, Caldwell said softly, would you like to go back to the inn? To see the birds again? The girl's eyes lit up for a moment. Can I really? And will you finish teaching me to read? I'll teach you everything you want to learn. This is ridiculous, Dennis exploded. Uncle, you can't make a decision like that based on a child's emotional blackmail. It's not emotional blackmail, it's doing the right thing. The right thing would be for you to find a woman from your social class, have your own children, build a real family. The comment revealed more than Dennis intended. Caldwell stared at him with a new expression, as if he were seeing his nephew for the first time. Is that what bothers you? It's not just the accusations against Maria. It's the fact that if I get involved with them, I may have less interest in other things. What are you talking about? I'm talking about your inheritance, Dennis. That's what really worries you, isn't it? The silence that followed was revealing. Dennis opened and closed his mouth several times, clearly looking for an answer that wouldn't incriminate him. This is absurd, he said finally. I'm worried about your well-being. My well-being or your financial future? Maria watched the confrontation between uncle and nephew with growing understanding. She finally understood why Dennis had worked so hard to keep her away from Caldwell. It wasn't family protection. It was pure greed. Caldwell, she said, quietly, maybe we should talk in private. There's nothing to talk about, Dennis said desperately. Uncle, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. The biggest mistake of my life, Caldwell said slowly, was trusting you instead of trusting my own judgment. He turned to Maria. Do you accept going back to the inn with Sophia? This time it will be different, I promise. Maria looked at her daughter, who had stopped crying and was now watching everything intently. Even in the midst of mental confusion, Sophia seemed to understand that something important was happening. If we go back, Maria said carefully, I want it to be clear that it's not charity. I'm going to work. I'm going to earn my salary, honestly. I'm going to take care of Sophia with my own resources whenever possible. And I want it to be clear that you are welcome not only as employees, but as family. The word family hung in the air like a promise. Sophia heard it and smiled for the first time in days. Are we going to be a family? She asked, her voice full of hope. If your mother wants to, Caldwell replied, looking at Maria. Dennis took a step back, realizing that he had completely lost control of the situation. If you do this, he said with a trembling voice, there will be consequences. I'm going to tell the whole town about your inappropriate choices. Tell them, Caldwell said simply, and when you tell them, explain also why you thought you had the right to interfere in my personal life. Dennis looked around, realizing that there were several people watching from the window. The story would spread quickly through the town, but not in the way he had hoped. This isn't over, he murmured, before walking away quickly. After he left, Maria, Caldwell, Sophia, and Patty were silent for a moment. What now? Maria asked. Now, Caldwell said, we're going home. And tomorrow, Sophia is going to see the best doctors in New York City. Sophia clapped her hands, but then looked worriedly at Patty. Can Aunt Patty come too? She was very good to me. Caldwell smiled. Of course she can. Our family is growing. But as they prepared to leave, none of them imagined that Dennis hadn't given up. In fact, he had only begun to execute a much more dangerous plan to separate them definitively. The return to the Acorn Inn was like returning home after a long exile. Sophia ran straight to the garden, looking for the birds she had left behind, while Maria watched with a mixture of relief and anxiety. "They're still here," Sophia cried, pointing to the robins that were hopping among the branches. "The birdies waited for me." Caldwell smiled, but noticed that the girl still seemed more fragile than before. Her movements were less coordinated, her speech sometimes confused, as if her mind was struggling to stay in the present. Elizabeth welcomed them with a warm hug that surprised even herself. "I missed you too," she admitted. The inn got very quiet without Sophia's voice. "Elizabeth," Caldwell said, "I want you to prepare the main room in the back for Maria and Sophia, the one with the porch that overlooks the garden." "Mr. Caldwell, it's not necessary," Maria began. "Yes, it is. Sophia needs an environment that helps her recover, and you need a place where you really feel at home." That night, for the first time in weeks, Sophia slept peacefully. But in the middle of the night, Maria was awakened by a strange noise. She found her daughter sitting on the porch, talking animatedly to someone who wasn't there. "Hi, Daddy," Sophia was saying to the air. "Did you come to pick me up? Mommy said you had gone away forever, but I knew you were coming back." Maria's heart ached. Sophia had never known her father. He had abandoned Maria as soon as he learned of the pregnancy. But in the episodes of confusion, the girl sometimes created imaginary father figures. "Sophia, honey, come back to bed," Maria said gently. "But Daddy is here," Sophia insisted. "He said he's going to take care of us both now." Maria managed to get her daughter back to bed, but stayed awake the rest of the night, worried. The episodes were becoming more frequent and more elaborate. The next morning, Caldwell kept his promise. He called the best pediatric neurologist in New York City and scheduled an urgent appointment for Sophia. "Dr. Michael Carter," he explained to Maria. "He's considered the best in the area for childhood neurological disorders." "It must be very expensive," she said, biting her lip. "Don't worry about that. Sophia is the priority now." The trip to New York City was marked by another episode from Sophia. In the middle of the journey, she woke up from a nap confused, not recognizing where she was. "Mommy, why are we in this strange car? Who is this man?" she asked, pointing at Caldwell with fear. "It's Uncle Caldwell, remember? We're going to the doctor." "I don't want a doctor. Doctors are bad. They're gonna take me away!" Sophia cried, trying to open the car door in motion. Caldwell stopped quickly on the shoulder of the road. "Sophia, look at me," he said calmly. "It's me, Uncle Caldwell. Remember the peppermint candies? Remember the birds?" Gradually, recognition returned to the girl's eyes. "Uncle Caldwell, why did I forget about you?" "Sometimes our mind gets confused when we're tired," he explained. "But I'll always be here to remind you who I am." In Dr. Carter's office, Sophia underwent a series of tests while Maria and Caldwell waited anxiously. The doctor, a man of 50 with grey hair and a gentle look, spoke at length with the girl, observing her behaviors and reactions. "The imaging tests will take a few days to come back," he explained afterwards. "But from the clinical evaluation, I suspect that Sophia has a mild form of temporal lobe epilepsy." "Epilepsy?" Maria asked, scared. "It's not the type of epilepsy that people imagine, with visible seizures. This type mainly causes mental confusion, episodes of disconnection from reality, memory problems. The good news is that it's highly treatable with appropriate medication." "And if it's not treated," Caldwell asked, "it can worsen. Progressively, the child may develop permanent cognitive problems, learning difficulties, social isolation." Maria felt her legs weaken. "How long has she had this?" "Probably since she was little." "The emotional stress and instability that you've experienced have certainly aggravated the symptoms." The guilt that Maria felt was overwhelming. If she had sought medical help before, if she hadn't run away from hospitals for fear, "Don't blame yourself," said Dr. Carter as if reading her thoughts. "Many parents don't recognize these symptoms. The important thing is that now we're going to start the correct treatment." During the return trip, Sophia slept in the back seat, exhausted by the tests. Maria and Caldwell spoke in low voices. "Thank you," she said, "for insisting on bringing her here. You don't need to thank me. It's the least I can do after." "You don't need to keep blaming yourself forever," Maria interrupted. "We all make mistakes. What's important is how we deal with them afterwards. How can you forgive me so easily? Because I saw how you look at Sophia. I saw how you genuinely care about her. It's not pity or guilt, it's love." The word hung in the air between them, charged with meanings that neither of them was ready to explore completely. When they arrived at the inn, they found an unpleasant surprise. Father Michael, the pastor of the local church, was in the lobby talking seriously with Elizabeth. "Caldwell," said the priest upon seeing him enter, "I need to talk to you about a delicate matter." Caldwell felt his stomach contract. "Father Michael, what a pleasure to receive you. What brings you here?" "I've received some concerns from parishioners about the situation here at the inn." Caldwell felt his stomach tighten. "What kind of concerns?" "About the appropriateness of a single man housing a woman and her daughter. Some people are questioning the moral propriety of the situation." Maria, who was listening from the stairs with Sophia still sleeping in her arms, felt humiliation burn her face. It was exactly what she feared, that her presence would bring problems for Caldwell. "Father," Caldwell said firmly, "I can assure you that there is nothing improper in my conduct. I'm simply helping a family in need. I believe you, my son, but appearances also matter. Perhaps it would be better to find another way to help this family." "Another way like what?" "There are appropriate institutions, families who could adopt the child." "No," Sophia's voice echoed through the lobby. She had woken up and heard part of the conversation. "I don't want to go away. I want to stay with Uncle Caldwell and my mom." Father Michael observed the girl with curiosity. "This is the child." Sophia hid in Maria's shoulder, scared of the man in the black robe. In her mental confusion, figures of authority terrified her. "She has medical issues," Caldwell explained. "She's starting a treatment that can completely change her life." "I understand. But even so, Caldwell, you need to consider your reputation in the town, your social position." "My social position is irrelevant when it comes to doing what is right." At that moment, Dennis arrived at the inn, accompanied by two people that Caldwell didn't know, a man in a suit and a woman with a folder of documents. "Uncle," said Dennis with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "I brought some people to talk about the future of the inn." The man introduced himself. "Attorney David Miller. I represent some investors interested in the properties of the Caldwell family." Caldwell felt his blood run cold. "What kind of interest?" "Well," said Dennis, "considering that you're making emotionally compromised decisions lately, we thought it best to protect the family assets. It was an ambush. Dennis had brought the priest to create moral pressure and the lawyers to create legal pressure. He was trying to force Caldwell to choose between his biological family and his chosen family. And Maria, watching everything unfold, realized that the battle for her happiness and for Sophia's health was just beginning. The tension in the inn's lobby was palpable. Caldwell looked from Dennis to the attorney, then to the priest, quickly understanding that he had been surrounded on all sides. "What kind of asset protection are you suggesting?" he asked, keeping his voice controlled. Attorney David Miller opened his folder with professional efficiency. "Mr. Dennis has informed us about some impulsive decisions that you've been making lately. Unnecessary expenses, involvement with people of questionable reputation. The people you're talking about are right here," Caldwell said coldly. "They can explain themselves directly to them." Maria descended the last steps of the stairs, still carrying Sophia, who was hiding on her neck. The girl murmured softly, Too many strange people, Mommy. Are they going to send us away again? Mr. Caldwell, Maria said with dignity, maybe it's better if we talk in private later. No, he replied firmly. Whatever they have to say can be said in front of you. After all, apparently it's about you. Dennis took a step forward. Uncle, do you see? She's already interfering in your decisions. That's exactly what we want to avoid. The only person interfering here is you, Caldwell retorted. And, frankly, I'm starting to wonder what authority you think you have over my life. The attorney cleared his throat. Mr. Caldwell, your nephew is concerned about your ability to make rational decisions. He's considering requesting an evaluation of mental competency. The silence that followed was deafening. Maria felt her blood run cold. They were trying to declare Caldwell mentally incapable to take control of his assets. Mental competency? Caldwell repeated, his voice dangerously low. Are you accusing me of insanity because I decided to help a sick child? It's not just that, Dennis said quickly. You've been acting irrationally since you lost Aunt Eleanor. Social isolation, questionable financial decisions, and now this, inappropriate involvement. Father Michael spoke up. Caldwell, perhaps we should talk about more appropriate alternatives to help this family. Father, Caldwell said, turning to him, 3 years ago, when I lost Eleanor, you told me that God never closes a door without opening a window. Sophia and Maria are my open window, and now you want me to close it because of gossip? Sophia, who had been quiet, suddenly raised her head. Is Uncle Caldwell leaving too? She asked with a trembling voice. Everyone always leaves. The innocent question of the girl cut through all the political tension in the room. For a moment, everyone present saw the situation through the eyes of a 6-year-old who had already suffered too much abandonment in her life. No, little one, Caldwell said, approaching. I'm not going anywhere. Promise, she insisted, extending her pinky in the traditional children's promise. Caldwell intertwined his finger with hers. I promise. Dennis watched the scene with growing frustration. Uncle, you're letting yourself be emotionally manipulated by a child. And you're trying to manipulate me financially, Caldwell retorted. The difference is that her motivations are pure. The attorney tried to regain control of the situation. Mr. Caldwell, we need to discuss practical issues. The administration of your businesses, the protection of family assets. My assets are perfectly protected, Caldwell cut him off. And my businesses are doing very well, thank you. But what if something happens to you? Who's going to manage everything? I've had my will in order for years. It's all duly documented. Dennis paled. What are you talking about? I'm talking about you never being my sole heir, Dennis. There have always been conditional clauses in my will. What clauses? Clauses that depend on your character and your ability to put the interests of the family above your own. The revelation fell like a bomb. Dennis had spent years assuming that he would automatically inherit everything, never imagining that his behavior was being evaluated. That's blackmail, he exploded. That's responsibility, Caldwell corrected. Something that you clearly haven't learned yet. Father Michael tried to mediate. My sons, we don't need to get to this point. Perhaps we can find a solution that benefits everyone. The solution is simple, Caldwell said. Maria and Sophia stay. Whoever doesn't like it can leave. At that moment, the door of the inn opened and entered a man that Maria recognized immediately. Dr. Michael Carter, the neurologist who had examined Sophia. Doctor, said Caldwell, surprised. What are you doing here? I came personally to bring the results of Sophia's tests. They're urgent. Everyone turned to look at the girl, who was still in Maria's arms, watching everything with confused eyes. The tests confirmed temporal lobe epilepsy, Dr. Carter continued. But there's something more. Sophia also shows signs of a severe nutritional deficiency that has significantly aggravated her condition. Nutritional deficiency? asked Maria, alarmed. Lack of essential vitamins for neurological development, probably a result of months of inadequate nutrition. The doctor looked around the room. The good news is that with proper treatment, medication, vitamin supplementation, and above all, emotional stability, she can recover completely. And without treatment? Caldwell asked. The damage can become permanent. She needs constant specialized care for the next few months. Dennis tried one last card. See, she needs specialized care. It would be better in an appropriate institution. Dr. Carter looked at him disapprovingly. Actually, studies show that children with these conditions recover better in stable family environments, with consistent attachment figures. Attachment figures? The priest repeated. People that the child loves and trusts. In Sophia's case, he looked at Caldwell, it's evident that she has formed a very strong paternal bond. Separating her from that figure at this moment would be traumatic and could seriously harm her treatment. The room fell silent. The specialized medical opinion had demolished all the arguments against Maria and Sophia's stay at the inn. Furthermore, Dr. Carter continued, I'd like to congratulate whoever made the decision to seek treatment for her. A few more weeks without medical care, and the damage could have been irreversible. Caldwell felt an enormous relief, but also an even greater responsibility. Sophia didn't just need his protection. She needed him to heal. Doctor, said Maria with a trembling voice, how long will the treatment take? With luck, 6 months. For complete stabilization, but she'll need follow-up for years. Father Michael cleared his throat uncomfortably. Well, considering the medical opinion, Caldwell said firmly, I don't think there's anything else to discuss. Sophia stays, Maria stays, and anyone who has a problem with that can remove themselves from my property. Dennis looked around, realizing that he had completely lost the battle. The attorney put away his papers with a defeated air, and Father Michael headed discreetly for the door. But before leaving, Dennis turned one last time. This isn't over, Uncle. You're going to regret choosing strangers over family. I didn't choose strangers, Caldwell replied, looking at Sophia, who was now smiling shyly at Dr. Carter. I chose my real family. After everyone left, Maria finally collapsed into a chair, the weight of all the tension leaving her exhausted. I'm sorry, she said, for bringing all these problems into your life. You didn't bring problems, Caldwell replied. You brought purpose. Sophia, who had remained surprisingly calm during the entire confrontation, looked at the two most important adults in her life. Are we a real family now? She asked hopefully. Now we're a real family, Caldwell confirmed, and for the first time since Dennis's arrival, everyone smiled. The following weeks brought a tranquility that Maria almost didn't dare to believe. Sophia had started treatment with the medications prescribed by Dr. Carter, and the results were visible day after day. The episodes of confusion decreased drastically, and the girl gradually recovered her vibrant personality. Uncle Caldwell, look what I learned to write, she said one morning, running to show a sheet where she had written family with shaky but careful letters. It's perfect, little one, he replied, genuinely moved. You're getting very smart. Mrs. Johnson said, I can start school next month. Sophia announced, jumping for joy. Caldwell had hired a private tutor to accompany Sophia at home until she was ready to attend the local elementary school. The 35-year-old woman, specializing in children with special needs, had been impressed with the girl's progress. She has an exceptional intelligence, Mrs. Johnson had commented to Maria and Caldwell. The mental confusion masked her true abilities. With proper treatment, she can go far in her studies. Maria juggled her work at the inn and caring for Sophia, but now there was a lightness in her tasks that didn't exist before. She knew that Caldwell was genuinely committed to their well-being, and that gave her a security that she had lost a long time ago. However, not everything was rosy. Dennis had disappeared completely from Caldwell's life, but his absence brought practical problems. The candy factory needed supervision, and some of the family's businesses began to show irregularities. "I found some discrepancies in the accounting books," the factory's accountant said during an urgent meeting. "There seemed to be unauthorized withdrawals in the last 6 months." Caldwell leafed through the documents with growing concern. "What kind of withdrawals?" "Small amounts, but constant, always authorized by Mr. Dennis's signature. They total almost $50,000. $50,000? Caldwell felt his stomach churn. "And you never questioned it?" "He said they were expenses approved by you, purchase of equipment, maintenance. He always had justifications." Caldwell ran a hand over his face, tired. Dennis hadn't just tried to manipulate him emotionally. He had stolen from the family business. When he arrived home that night, he found Maria and Sophia in the garden. The girl was playing with the inn's cats, while Maria took care of the flowers. It was a scene of domestic peace that contrasted sharply with the problems he faced. "You seem worried," Maria said, noticing his expression. "Problems at the factory. I found out that Dennis has been embezzling money. I'm sorry, I know how painful it is to discover that someone from the family has betrayed us." Caldwell looked at her, remembering that she had also faced betrayals and injustices. "How can you trust people after everything you've been through?" "I've learned that there are 2 types of people in the world," Maria replied, watching Sophia play. "Those who hurt others to protect themselves, and those who protect others even when it hurts them. You're the second type." That night, after Sophia fell asleep, Caldwell made an important decision. He sought out Maria in the kitchen, where she was preparing the next day's breakfast. "Maria, I need to ask you something." "Sure." "Would you marry me?" The question came out more abruptly than he intended. Maria stopped stirring the cake batter she was preparing and turned slowly to face him. "What?" "I know it may seem sudden, but I want you and Sophia to have complete security. I want you to officially be my family, and—" He hesitated. "I've discovered that I've fallen in love with you both. With your strength, your dedication, your kindness." Maria was silent for a long moment, processing the proposal. "Caldwell, are you sure you're not confusing gratitude with love?" "I'm sure that I wake up every day happy that you're here. I'm sure that I can't imagine my life without Sophia's laughter in the garden or without your conversations at night. If that's not love, then I don't know what is." "What if I say no? Then I'll respect your decision, but you'll continue to be welcome here always." Maria approached him, studying his face in the soft light of the kitchen. "Can I have one night to think?" "Of course." But before she could turn away, Caldwell gently took her hand. "Maria, I want you to know that it's not pity or charity. It's genuine love." She nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. The next morning, Maria woke up early and found Sophia already awake, sitting on the porch watching the birds. "Mommy," said the girl without turning around, "are you going to marry Uncle Caldwell?" Maria startled. Who told you that?" "No one told me, but I feel that you love each other, and I'd really like him to be my real dad." "And if he is?" Sophia turned around with a radiant smile. "Then we're going to be the happiest family in the world." The simplicity of her daughter's answer touched Maria deeply. Sophia had suffered so much from instability, from the lack of a father figure, from constant uncertainty. Now she had the chance to have a father who really loved her. During breakfast, with Sophia chattering excitedly about her plans for the day, Maria observed Caldwell. She saw how he listened attentively to every word of the girl, how his eyes lit up when she laughed, how he automatically cut the fruit into small pieces the way she liked it. They were small gestures, but they revealed a genuine paternal love. "Caldwell," she said when Sophia left to play in the garden, "I accept marrying you." The smile that lit up his face was more beautiful than any jewel. "But with one condition," she continued. "I want to work, not as an employee, but as your partner in the inn. I want to truly contribute to our family." "I accept," he said without hesitating. "In fact, I have a better proposal. How about we expand? We can turn the candy factory into something bigger, with you taking care of the administrative part, even after what Dennis did. Especially because of what Dennis did. I need someone I trust completely." When they told Sophia about the wedding, her reaction was better than any blessing. She hugged them both tightly and said, "Now no one will ever be able to separate us again." That afternoon, while they were planning the details of the ceremony, which would be simple at the inn itself, Elizabeth approached Caldwell with a worried expression. "Mr. Caldwell, there's someone at the front desk wanting to talk to you. He said he's from the police." Caldwell's heart raced. Had Dennis invented some accusation against him? When he arrived at the reception, he found an investigator in plain clothes who introduced himself as Detective Mark Johnson. "Mr. Caldwell, I'm investigating a case of embezzlement involving your nephew, Dennis. I'd like to ask you some questions." "Of course, Detective. How can I help?" "We discovered that he defrauded several businessmen in the area, using your name as a reference. He promised investments in Caldwell family projects, but the money went directly into his personal accounts." Caldwell felt a mixture of anger and sadness. Dennis hadn't just stolen from him. He had used the family name to deceive other people. "How much money are we talking about?" "More than $200,000. He's been missing for a week. Do you have any idea where he might be?" "I haven't spoken to him in almost a month." After the detective left, Caldwell sat on the porch, watching Maria teach Sophia to plant sunflower seeds in the garden. The family he had chosen to build was flourishing, but the last vestiges of his biological family were disintegrating. Maria sensed his melancholy and approached. "Are you thinking about Dennis?" "I'm thinking about how a person can choose to destroy instead of build. Maybe he'll still learn. Sometimes people need to lose everything to discover what really matters." That night, while Sophia slept peacefully in her room, without nightmares, without episodes of confusion, just the serene sleep of a safe and loved child, Caldwell and Maria finalized their plans for the future. They would marry the following month at the Willow Creek Summer Festival, turning the event into a double celebration. Sophia would be officially adopted as their daughter, and together they would build not only a family, but a legacy of love and honesty that would replace the ashes left by Dennis's betrayal. The Willow Creek Summer Festival promised to be the most special in recent years. The Central Park was buzzing with preparations, tents being set up, colorful streamers decorating the streets, and the aroma of barbecue and apple pie beginning to perfume the air. Sophia was radiant, helping Maria organize the sweets they would contribute to the in-store. Her hair had grown and now shone with health, and her vibrant personality emerged more each day with the success of the treatment. "Mummy, can I wear the pink sundress for the festival?" she asked, spinning around the kitchen with a wooden spoon in her hands. "Of course, my dear. After all, it's going to be a very special day." The wedding had been scheduled to take place during the festival, in a simple ceremony in the small chapel that would be set up in the center of the park. Father Michael, who had reconsidered his position after the events of recent weeks, had agreed to celebrate the union. Caldwell was in the office, sorting out the last legal details, when Elizabeth knocked on the door with a worried expression. "Mr. Caldwell, a letter arrived for you. The mailman said it's urgent." The letter had no sender, just his name written in handwriting that he recognized immediately. It was from Dennis. "Uncle," read the letter, "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know the truth about everything that happened. The money I took from the company, I'll return every cent. I was desperate, thinking I was going to lose my inheritance to strangers, but now I understand that the strangers were me. I was the stranger in the family. Maria and Sophia brought back the good man that you always were. I know you can be happy together. I won't bother you anymore. I wish all the happiness in the world to your new family. Dennis. Along with the letter was a check for the exact amount that had been embezzled from the company. Caldwell was silent for a long moment, looking at the papers. He felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Relief that Dennis had finally recognized his mistakes, and sadness for having completely lost the nephew he had raised. "Good news?" Maria asked, appearing in the doorway. Dennis returned the money and apologized in his own way. Maria approached and read the letter over his shoulder. "Maybe there's still hope for him. You're too generous for someone he tried to destroy." "I'm not generous. I just understand what it's like to be lost and desperate." That afternoon, during the final preparations for the festival, something unexpected happened. Patty arrived at the inn carrying a suitcase and a shy smile. "I came for the festival," she said, "and if the offer is still valid, I'd really like to work here at the inn." Caldwell and Maria had offered her a job weeks ago, recognizing her kindness and her need. But Patty had hesitated to accept, afraid of interfering with the new family that was forming. "The offer is not only valid, but we were waiting for you," said Maria, hugging the friend who had welcomed her in the most difficult moments. "Is Aunt Patty going to live with us?" asked Sophia, running to hug the woman's legs. "If you'll have me," she replied, moved. "Our family is growing," Caldwell observed, and for the first time in years, he felt truly complete. On the morning of the festival, Willow Creek woke up with a blue sky and perfect temperature. Maria wore a simple white dress that she had bought at Mrs. Thompson's store, while Sophia wore her pink sundress with braids decorated with colorful ribbons. "You look beautiful, Mommy," said Sophia, watching Maria get ready in the mirror. "Daddy Caldwell is going to be very happy." Daddy Caldwell. The words sounded natural on the girl's lips, as if he had always been her father. The festival began at noon, and soon the park was full of families, music, and joy. Caldwell wore a simple plaid shirt and jeans. He had insisted that he didn't want anything too formal. When it was time for the ceremony, at 4 in the afternoon, a small crowd gathered around the makeshift chapel. Not everyone was invited. Many townspeople simply wanted to witness the wedding of the richest man in Willow Creek to the woman who had won his heart. Father Michael opened the ceremony with words that surprised everyone. "We are here to celebrate not only the union of two people, but the birth of a real family, a family that chose each other based on love and dedication." Maria walked to the simple altar accompanied by Sophia, who carried the rings on a small pillow. When they got close to Caldwell, Sophia whispered loud enough for several to hear, "Now you're going to be my real dad." The child's spontaneity drew laughter and tears from the small audience. The vows were simple but profound. Caldwell promised to love and protect both Maria and Sophia for the rest of his life. Maria promised to build with him a family based on love, honesty, and mutual dedication. When Father Michael declared them husband and wife and Caldwell kissed his new wife, Sophia shouted, "Hooray! Now we're a real family." The party that followed was magical. Sophia square danced with other children, her laughter echoing through the park. Maria and Caldwell danced their first dance as husband and wife to the sound of a country song played by local accordion players. "Are you happy?" Caldwell asked while they danced. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," Maria replied, looking at Sophia, who was playing with other children nearby. But the big surprise of the night was yet to come. When the party began to come to an end, Mrs. Thompson approached the couple with an emotional expression. "Caldwell, Maria," she said, "the whole town has gathered and decided to make a special gift for you." She handed an envelope to Maria. Inside was a document that made her cry on the spot, a certificate of good character signed by all the important families of Willow Creek, officially recognizing her dignity and her value as a citizen. "We know you've been through difficult times because of gossip," explained Mrs. Thompson. "But now the whole town recognizes that you are an exemplary family." "And there's more," said the mayor, who had arrived silently. "The town council has decided to offer a full scholarship to Sophia from elementary school to university if she wants it." Sophia, who didn't fully understand the meaning of the documents but realized that they were important, asked, "Does that mean I can study forever?" "It means you can study as much as you want," replied Caldwell, picking her up in his arms. "Then I want to study to be a doctor like Dr. Carter, to help other children who get confused like I used to." A 6-year-old girl's statement touched everyone present deeply. She had transformed her pain into purpose, her experience into a desire to help others. When they finally returned home, it was almost midnight. Sophia fell asleep in the car, exhausted but smiling. Caldwell carried her to her room, where he tucked her into bed with the affection of a true father. "Thank you," Maria whispered when they met in the hallway. "For what?" "For having saved not only our lives, but our dreams." "You saved me too," he replied. "You saved me from bitterness, from loneliness, from the feeling that my life no longer had purpose." That night, on their first day as an officially constituted family, the three slept with the certainty that they had found something rare and precious, a true love built on solid foundations of respect, dedication, and hope. Outside, Willow Creek slept peacefully, knowing that it had witnessed not only a wedding, but the rebirth of 3 people who had refused to give up on happiness even when everything seemed lost. But the greatest revelation was yet to come, a discovery that would forever change everyone's understanding of the mysterious connections that unite people and of how destiny sometimes works in ways we could never imagine. 6 months after the wedding, life at the Acorn Inn had found a perfect rhythm. Sophia attended the local elementary school with exceptional performance. Her episodes of confusion were a thing of the past, and her brilliant personality blossomed every day. Maria had become not only Caldwell's wife, but his true business partner. Together, they had transformed the candy factory into a prosperous and modern company, maintaining the family tradition but expanding into new markets. "Mommy, look!" Sophia cried one Saturday morning, running to show her report card. "I got an A in all subjects." "I'm very proud of you," Maria said, hugging her daughter. "And so is your dad." Dad. The word had become natural to all of them. Caldwell wasn't just Sophia's stepfather. He was her father in every sense that mattered. Caldwell entered the kitchen at that moment, carrying mail that had just arrived. Among the business letters, there was one that caught his attention. It came from the county clerk's office and was addressed to Maria. "Something arrived for you," he said, handing her the official envelope. Maria opened it with curiosity. It was a notification about a document rectification process that she had requested months ago, trying to correct some errors in her birth certificate. But when she read the contents, she paled completely. "What is it?" Caldwell asked, worried about her reaction. "It can't be," she murmured, rereading the document several times. "This has to be a mistake." "Maria, tell me what's happening." With trembling hands, she showed him the paper. It was a birth certificate that revealed something impossible. Maria's mother's name was Consuelo Sanchez Caldwell. "Caldwell?" asked Cladwell, confused. "Like the same last name as my family. According to this document, my mother was the daughter of Henry Caldwell," Maria said with a trembling voice. "Does that name mean anything to you?" Caldwell sat heavily in a chair. "Henry Caldwell was my great-uncle, my grandfather's brother. He disappeared from the family more than 40 years ago after a fight about inheritance. The silence that followed was deafening. Slowly, the implication of that revelation became clear to both. That means that, Maria began, that we're distant cousins, Caldwell finished, that you've always been family even before we met. Sophia, who was listening to everything without fully understanding, asked, "Is that good or bad?" "It's unexpected," Maria said. Still processing the information, Caldwell got up and began to walk around the kitchen, putting the pieces of the puzzle together. "That's why you seemed familiar from the first moment. That's why I felt such a strong connection. You think that explains everything, that it was just unconscious family recognition?" The question carried an anxiety that Caldwell recognized immediately. Maria was afraid that her feelings would be diminished by this discovery. "No," he said firmly, approaching her. "That doesn't explain why I fell in love with your strength, your dedication, the way you love Sophia. That doesn't explain why I wake up every day happy to have you by my side. Are you sure?" "I'm sure that distant kinship doesn't create true love. I'm sure that what we feel for each other was built through shared experiences, conscious choices, and genuine feelings." Sophia chimed in. "So now we're family twice?" The innocent question of the girl broke the tension. Maria and Caldwell laughed, realizing the simplicity of the situation seen through the eyes of a child. "Yes, little one," Caldwell said, picking her up in his arms. "We're family twice." That afternoon, they decided to investigate the family history further. They searched for old documents at the county clerk's office and talked to older residents of the town who still remembered Henry Caldwell. Mrs. Olson, an 89-year-old woman who lived in a nursing home nearby, remembered him well. "Henry was a hard-working guy," she said, sitting on the nursing home's porch. "But he fought badly with his brother over land. He said he was leaving and never coming back. He went to New York City with his pregnant wife." "What was his wife's name?" Maria asked Alice. "They were very close, those two. But Henry was too proud to back down after the fight." Gradually, the story came together. Henry Caldwell had settled in New York City, where his daughter Consuelo was born. The Caldwell family of Willow Creek never heard from him again, assuming that he had died. Consuelo grew up in New York City, married a man named Sanchez, and had a daughter, Maria. "My mother never talked about my grandfather's family," Maria said as they drove back home. "I don't think she even knew about the connection with Willow Creek. Or maybe she knew and preferred not to talk about it," Caldwell suggested. "After the fight, maybe Henry forbade any mention of the original family." When they arrived at the inn, they found a surprise waiting for them. Dr. Carter had come to make a follow-up visit to Sophia, but he brought news that went beyond medicine. "How is our little patient doing?" he asked, examining Sophia with the stethoscope. "Very well, doctor," she replied cheerfully. "I don't get confused anymore, and I'm learning a lot of things at school." "Excellent. The most recent tests show that the treatment was completely effective. Sophia is cured." The word cured echoed through the room like music. Maria cried with relief, while Caldwell hugged Dr. Carter with gratitude. "Does that mean I don't need to take the medicine anymore?" Sophia asked. "We'll reduce it gradually, but in a few months you probably won't need any medication." After Dr. Carter left, the family gathered in the garden to process all the revelations of the day. Sophia was playing with the cats, while Maria and Caldwell talked under the ancient oak tree. "It's funny how life works," Maria said. "I spent years feeling like an orphan, without family, and all the while I had relatives here in Willow Creek. And I spent years feeling alone after Eleanor's death, without knowing that my real family was suffering on the streets of the same town. Do you think it's destiny?" Caldwell thought for a moment. "I think it's a combination of destiny and choice. Destiny brought us to the same place at the right time, but the choice was ours. To choose to trust, to choose to love, to choose to fight for our feelings, even when everything seemed difficult." That night, During dinner, Sophia asked a question that caught both adults off guard. "Daddy, can I call you Grandpa too?" "What do you mean, honey?" Caldwell asked, confused. "Well, if you and Mommy are cousins and you're my daddy, doesn't that make you kind of my great-uncle too?" Maria and Caldwell exchanged glances and burst out laughing. Sophia's childish logic had found a fun way to see the complexity of the family situation. "I think you can call me whatever you want," Caldwell said, "as long as you continue to be my special daughter." "Then I'm going to keep calling you Daddy," Sophia decided, "because that's what you really are." Later, after Sophia fell asleep, Maria and Caldwell stood on the porch watching the stars over Willow Creek. The town slept peacefully, and the inn was quiet, wrapped in the peace of a family finally complete. "You know what impresses me most about this whole story," Maria said. "What? That maybe our family never really separated. Maybe we were just lost to each other for a few decades. And now we've found each other," Caldwell completed. "And now we found each other," she repeated, taking his hand. The next morning they would wake up to discover that their lives were about to change once again, with a final revelation that would put everything into perspective and give the perfect closure to a story that had begun with suffering, but was about to end with a joy that neither of them could ever have imagined. A year after the discovery about the kinship, on a sunny December morning, Maria woke up with a strange feeling. It wasn't illness, but something different, a subtle change in her body that she couldn't identify. Sophia, now 8 years old and fully recovered, had become a bright and confident girl. She was in the kitchen helping Patty prepare breakfast when Maria came down, still sleepy. "Good morning, Mommy," Sophia said cheerfully. "Daddy already left for the factory, but he said he'll be back early today because there's going to be a surprise." "What surprise?" Maria asked, accepting the cup of coffee that Patty offered her. "I can't tell you. It's a secret," the girl replied, covering her mouth with dramatic hands. Maria smiled, but the strange feeling persisted. During the morning, while taking care of the inn's guests, she realized that she was more tired than usual and felt a light nausea that came and went. "Maria," said Elizabeth when she saw her leaning on the front desk, "you're pale. Aren't you feeling well?" "Just a little tired. It must be the excess of work." But when the nausea intensified at lunchtime, Maria began to suspect something that made her tremble with emotion and fear at the same time. That afternoon, while Sophia was at school, she went discreetly to the town's pharmacy and bought a pregnancy test. Her hands were trembling when she did the test in the inn's bathroom. 2 lines appeared on the display. Maria sat on the edge of the bathtub, looking at the result with a mixture of joy and shock. At 35 years old, after everything she had been through, she was pregnant again. Caldwell arrived home early, as he had promised, carrying a wrapped gift box. He found Maria sitting in the garden, watching Sophia play with the cats. "What's your surprise?" she asked, trying to appear normal. "First, tell me how your day was," he said, noticing something different in her expression. "You seem, I don't know, different." "Caldwell," she said, taking a deep breath, "I have news to tell you. Good or bad. It depends on how you're going to receive it." He sat next to her on the garden bench. "You can talk?" "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed lasted only a few seconds, but it seemed like an eternity. Then Caldwell's face lit up with a smile that she had never seen before. "Really, are you sure?" "I did the test today. Positive." Caldwell hugged her so tightly that she had to ask him to loosen up. "I can't believe it. We're going to have a baby." "Baby!" cried Sophia, who had approached running upon hearing the conversation. "I'm going to have a little brother or sister." Maria laughed through the tears that began to roll down her face. "Yes, my dear, you're going to be a big sister." Sophia began to jump and shout with joy, running through the garden and announcing to the cats, "I'm going to have a little brother. I'm going to teach him everything." "And if it's a girl?" asked Caldwell, still hugging Maria. "Then I'm going to teach her everything." Sophia corrected without losing enthusiasm. Caldwell remembered the box he had brought. "Well, my surprise is going to have to wait a little." "What surprise?" He handed the box to Maria. Inside there was a deed. The Acorn Inn was being officially transferred to her name too. "I wanted you to know that this is your home as much as mine," he explained. "But now that we're going to have another baby, we're going to have to think about expanding," she completed, smiling. That night, after Sophia fell asleep dreaming of her future brother or sister, Maria and Caldwell stood on the porch talking about their plans for the baby. "Are you scared?" he asked. "A little. With Sophia, I was alone, without resources, without support. Now," she looked around, seeing the quiet inn, the stable life they had built. "Now it's completely different. It's going to be different in every way. This baby is going to grow up knowing only love and security." 2 days later, when they went to tell Dr. Carter the news, he gave them news that moved them even more. "The pregnancy is perfect," he said after the exams, "and I have an interesting theory about why you were able to get pregnant now." "How so?" Maria asked. "The stress that you lived for years may have affected your fertility. Now, with your life stabilized, your body has finally relaxed enough to allow a new pregnancy. So our happiness created the baby?" asked Sophia, who had insisted on accompanying the appointment. "In a way, yes," Dr. Carter smiled. "Your happiness created the perfect conditions for this baby. The months that followed were the happiest of everyone's lives." Sophia assumed the role of big sister with adorable seriousness, talking to her mother's belly every night and making elaborate plans for when the baby was born. Caldwell became even more protective and loving, if that was possible. He accompanied Maria on all medical appointments, read books about fatherhood, and prepared the baby's room with the care of an artist. The entire town followed the pregnancy with affectionate interest. Mrs. Thompson knitted baby clothes, Elizabeth prepared special purees, and even Father Michael offered a special mass for the well-being of the family. In June, on a quiet morning, Maria went into labor. Caldwell drove her to the hospital in Poughkeepsie, with Sophia insisting on going along. "I want to meet my little brother as soon as he comes out," she declared. After 8 hours of smooth labor, Miguel Caldwell Sanchez was born, a healthy baby boy weighing 7 pounds, with his father's light eyes and his mother's delicate nose. When Sophia saw her brother for the first time, her reaction was perfect. "He's so tiny. I'm going to have to protect him from everything. And you're going to be the best big sister in the world," Caldwell said, holding Miguel in his arms with an emotion that left him speechless. That night, in the hospital room with Miguel, sleeping in the crib next to the bed, and Sophia finally asleep in the armchair, Maria and Caldwell talked quietly about the incredible journey that had led them there. "Can you believe it all started with Sophia trying to grab a roll at the bakery?" Maria said. "Can you believe I almost missed the chance to meet you because of pride and fear? But you didn't, and now look where we are." They looked at Miguel, who was sleeping peacefully, and at Sophia, who even in her sleep was smiling, probably dreaming of the adventures she would live with her little brother. "You know what moves me the most?" Caldwell said. "What?" "It's that Miguel is going to grow up in a family that has already been through everything. Difficulties, overcoming challenges, losses, reunions. He's going to grow up seeing that true love isn't perfect, but it's resilient. And he's going to grow up with a sister who knows the value of every happy day," Maria added. 6 months later, on a December afternoon, the whole family was gathered in the garden of the Acorn Inn. Miguel was crawling on the grass, watched carefully by Sophia, who took her role as protector very seriously. Caldwell watched the scene while watering the ancient oak trees. Maria approached, carrying a tray with lemonade. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "I'm thinking that sometimes life has a strange way of leading us exactly where we need to be," he replied. 3 years ago, I was a bitter and lonely man. Today, you're the father of 2 wonderful children and the husband of a woman who loves you very much," she completed, leaning on him. "And you? Do you have any regrets?" "My only regret is having taken so long to trust in the goodness of people," Maria said. "But maybe I needed to go through all that to appreciate what we have now." Sophia approached running, holding Miguel in her arms, with the care of someone carrying the greatest treasure in the world. "Mommy, Daddy," she said. "Miguel said Nonna. I think he was trying to say my name." "I'm sure he was," Caldwell said, picking up his son. "After all, you're the most important person in the world to him." "After you two," Sophia corrected with childish wisdom. That afternoon, as the sun set over Willow Creek and the family gathered for dinner, Maria looked around the table and felt immense gratitude. There were the people she had chosen to love and who had chosen to love her back. Sophia, now a bright and healthy 9-year-old girl, told funny stories from school to Miguel, who listened to her with complete attention, even without understanding the words. Caldwell held his son while talking to Maria about plans to expand the inn now that the family had grown. Patty and Elizabeth completed the table, the 2 women who had become honorary aunts of the children. "You know what I learned?" Maria said suddenly, making everyone stop to listen to her. "What?" they asked in chorus. "I learned that family isn't just about blood or legal documents. Family is about the people who choose to stay by your side. When everything gets difficult, it's about who you choose to love unconditionally. And about who chooses to love you back," Caldwell added. Sophia raised her glass of juice. "Then let's toast our chosen family." Everyone raised their glasses. Even Miguel tried to raise his bottle and toasted. At that moment, with the oak trees whispering in the soft December breeze and the first stars beginning to appear in the sky, the Caldwell-Sanchez family celebrated not only their union, but the living proof that true love can blossom in the most unexpected places and transform suffering into joy, loneliness into companionship, and strangers into family. The girl who once cried of hunger in front of a bakery now laughed in the garden of her own home, protecting a little brother who would grow up knowing only love and security. And her parents, who met at the darkest moment of their lives, now built together a bright future where each day was a new chance to choose love. The best families, as Caldwell had learned, are really those that we choose to have.